Welcome everybody to the June event. And I'm on the wrong slide though. You know what? Iteration, folks. We'll get there. So here's the slide I meant to show y'all. We're here. It's June. We're talking about how to elevate your design career this month. We have a panel of experts here to share their experience, their background, and their diverse paths into UX and beyond. So very excited to hear from all of them and to get you in chat land involved as well. So feel free to post questions in the chat or in the Q&A feature. We're going to be monitoring that as the night goes on, and we'll get to those questions if they naturally fit into what's being talked about. We'll probably sprinkle them in, otherwise we'll save them until a bit later, but we'll try and get to everything that we can. And this is the June event. We've got another event in July coming up. That is our summer social. Very excited again to be meeting in person in Minneapolis. It's at Optum's Rally Space in downtown, and a little bit more on that in a minute, but really excited to see everyone in person again. If you can make it, it is a members only event, so it's a good time to re-update that sponsorship or that membership rather, if you've let it lapse, or if you've never joined before. This is a great time to come in to the UXPA Minnesota fold and meet other local practitioners. Whether you are currently doing UX or you're interested in breaking in, might be a good reason to be here tonight. It's a very welcoming space. We're always happy to meet you regardless. So consider coming to that. And then the month after, in August, Savannah Kyle's coming to talk about how to open the door to the more diverse generation of UX practitioners, the next generation of folks that are going to be carrying the torch forward. And September and October, we're working on stuff, but not quite ready to announce. And then before we know it, November is going to be here again, but don't be sad because, you know, it might bring snow or bad weather here in Minnesota, but it also brings the World Usability Day. And that's a big fun worldwide event. We're doing the local event here virtually again this year. And the theme is our health, and that everything that entails, a very broad topic. And I'm throwing it out there because we are interested in hearing from you if you would like to speak on the topic of health, or if you have an idea and would like to participate in one of our other monthly events. If we can't fit you in this year, there's always next year. So contact Jason or Jalen. You can see them here on the call. There are event folks and they can talk to you about stuff. I could also talk to anyone that's interested in the World Usability Day talking about one way or another. Doesn't matter. Get in touch with one of us if you want to participate, and we'd love to hear from you. Like I mentioned, this is a good chance to become a UXPA-MN member. We've been doing these calls for free and sharing these recordings on YouTube, and we're sending out the Zoom links as well after we're done. So this has all been just something that we freely offer, but becoming a member gives you some benefits like access to our members only Slack and discounted admission if we do events like workshops that have in-person aspect or just more going on. That's going to include World Usability Day as well, and just other opportunities to get in touch with other members of the community. So consider doing that if you haven't already. And before we go on to the talk, just quickly want to thank our sponsors. Special big thanks, of course, to Optum, who, as I mentioned, is hosting the Summer Social next month. So we'll get to see their space and hear about any job opportunities that they have while we're there as well. They are exclusive sponsor in addition to hosting. So going above and beyond as a gold sponsor, but then also Boston Scientific, Foundry, and Beacon Hill very generously supporting UXPA-MN with financial donations so that we can keep the lights on, so we can bring in folks and host these cool events like our summer social for members without any additional charge. And Securian Financial, last but not least, at the silver tier, also really appreciate their support. And also pretty soon I'll be reaching out for support for World Usability Day. So if you're interested in sponsoring that, we'd love to talk to you. Of course, the year's halfway over, but you can still sponsor overall as an annual sponsor and get your name on the rest of these slides. Get in touch with me if you're interested in that. But without much further ado, I want to pass this over to our panelists. And like I mentioned, Jalen and Jason, our moderators and program directors this year and next, who set this up, who brought in our great panelists, and who will be running the talk and directing your questions to our panelists throughout the night. And for panelists, we have Fauzi Amanch. He is a UX designer at RBC. We have Brian Spindler, who is UX designer at Monterey Technologies. Adriana Rodriguez, UXA at Click, and Kevin Zimmerman, who is a senior UX designer at Zorro. So representing multiple different organizations. Some of them are local, some of them are not. Some of these folks have years of experience, others have fewer years of experience. We're going to hear all about that. And with that, I will hand it over to y'all, and I'll be back at the very end to say goodbye. I'm going to stop sharing now.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. I'm so excited about the panelists today. One special thing about all the panelists was that I worked with them all personally, or was a mentor to them in the start of their career. So I was so excited to see their career growth through LinkedIn or working directly with them. Kevin is one of my direct reports right now. And that's why we invited them here today to talk to us about how do you elevate your design career and make sure that you are on the right track to the next level. And with that, I would love for you guys to introduce yourself, share more about your role and where you work. Let's start with Fauzi, who's right next to me.
Hey everyone, really happy to be here and be talking to you all. My name is Fauzi. I'm a UX designer at the Royal Bank of Canada, so north of the border. I started working there in January, and before that I worked at an agency called Publicis Sapient, which is where I met Jason, and I graduated from school recently. I've only been out of school for 2 years, and I studied industrial engineering at the University of Toronto, and with a focus on human factors. So that's how I got into design.
Awesome. So glad to see you. And I was leading a cohort of new hires with Fauzi and Adriana. So that's how I know both of them. Adriana, would you like to go next?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Adriana. I currently work for a company called Click Health in Toronto, Canada. And my current role within Click is working as a user experience architect designer, where I help the pharma space for not only consumers, but also HCPs within that kind of realm space. But yeah. I'll pass it over to Brian.
Hey everyone, super happy to be here, and I am a UX designer with Monterey Technologies. Jason was my mentor before, so I am super pumped to be here with him today. Previously, I graduated from Prime Digital Academy, and I was there until January, and I just started my role with Monterey Technologies in April. So I will pass it over to Kevin.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'm Kevin Zimmerman. Also really excited to be here. Like Jason said, we work together currently at a website called Zorro.com, where we are an e-commerce website for business supplies. I'm a senior experience designer, and I've been with them for just over 4 years. So really excited to share some experience.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all those introductions. So to start it off, you're all designers, but maybe your jobs look a little different. So does anybody want to describe their day-to-day work for us?
I can get started with that one. Okay. Yeah, as a senior experience designer, I sit within a product team, and our product team's goal is to improve the selection experience for products on the e-commerce site. So we have about maybe 10 people on the team, so it's a fairly sizable team, in a mix of developers. I'm the sole experience designer on the team now, but we did have 2 members of the experience design team. we collaborate. We essentially collaborate on making the experience better. We decide what we work on, and then we work in sprint cycles, so 2-week sprints to try to improve the experience. So I don't know. That's just a quick intro, but I'll kind of leave it at that and see if there are any questions later.
I can go next. Yeah, I also work on, so I work at RBC. I work specifically on the banking app, so on mostly mobile. And my squad specifically works on acquisition onboarding, so getting new people to the bank or getting them to open new accounts all digitally without having to visit the branch. And the way my squad is structured, I'm the UX designer on the team. I also have a visual designer and a content designer that I work with really closely. We have a design lead, and we also have a development team and a product manager. And yeah, we pretty much meet every morning for our daily stand-up, just to share our progress and what we're up to, if we need any help with anything. And usually there's some quiet time during the day to do work, but also some meeting times to discuss projects with other teams, business stakeholders. It really depends. Well, that's the gist of it.
Brian, I know you are working with software for rockets. Tell us more about that.
It's not exactly just software for rockets, but yeah, I'll tell you about it. So yeah, I work with Monterey Technologies, like I said earlier, and we primarily specialize in human factors engineering and mission planning as well for the US military, primarily with the Air Force and the Navy. So my day-to-day is kind of like, first of all, a ton of meetings. And I work within a lean UX team. So I partner up with a lot of different designers or human factors engineers. But the day-to-day kind of looks like where, at the beginning of our sprint cycle, which I also work in like a 2-week sprint cycle, we get together, we divvy up the work, and for that next 2 weeks, then I'm kind of partnered up with a couple different people. Right now I work on 2 different projects, so I kind of go back and forth between those 2 spaces, and it can get kind of confusing at times, but it's super fun, and I'm learning something every single day. So it's a really good time. But yeah, primarily we just try to solve these complex problems on a daily basis, getting back to the root. But yeah, I'll leave it at that for now.
I can go really quickly as well. So I work at Click Health. So it's a pharmaceutical company. So the work path is a little bit differently because there's a lot of regulations that you need to go through in order for a product to ship out. So it's less so of an agile space, but more so of a hybrid between waterfall and hybrid, just because of how quickly or how slowly you need to regulate your product before the actual, let's say like a cream comes out, you want to promote that to your users. You need to make sure that that's all ready at the same time as when the product comes out as well. But right now, primarily I work under two designers. So one is my director and the other one is a senior designer. And we currently kind of work within a CS team that only focuses on particular projects. As within Click Health, we have a larger UX team, but we don't really cross paths that often because of competition between the two like agencies or even like the medical, like for example, AstraZeneca, or like, anyways, but I don't want to go in too deep, but so we don't typically cross paths, but when we do, it's always a joy. So we have like stand-ups and we see like what the team is going on and see what needs to be accomplished and have working kind of sessions with our creative and PMs and dev teams to make sure everything is aligned before product comes out.
That's so fascinating to hear how different we all are in terms of makeup of our organization. And I know that you guys are also having slightly different responsibility as well. Some of you are strategists, some of you are more in the design space. can you tell us a little bit more about the distinction between that? Because it's all like a spectrum, right? Kevin, I know I work with you a lot in the strategy space, so you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's I'm currently like I mentioned, the agile team I'm working on has several developers, and I'm as the sole XD experience design person on the team. I'm not designing everything, every little piece of it. It's a bit more of a strategic role, where I'm essentially working with the team to determine what can we do to improve the user experience. And sometimes that involves, more in-depth research or design, but a lot of the time it's discussing the work and what's priority and why is it priority, and how do we make this the user's world a little bit better. So yeah, so it's a mix of things. It's a mix of things for sure.
Who's in a design space a lot?
I am. Yeah, it's yeah, I guess to contrast with Kevin, I definitely design everything at this stage. But I'm also I guess relatively more junior, so I guess that's expected at this stage. I like to be in the weeds of it for now. Just like analyzing every single point and like taking into account every possible scenario and thinking through those. I think I enjoy that part a lot. But I think as I get more experience, I think I would like to focus more on like more of the strategic and like the research side of things, because that's something I do enjoy a lot, and that's something I kind of have exposure to in my current role because I've asked about it. So it's good that I get to be in the design space, but I also get to kind of explore these other areas that I usually wouldn't have exposure to.
I'll go next. And similar to Fauzi, I'm also on the more junior side and spend a lot more time on the design side, and kind of like what you just said, like being in the weeds quite a bit, having to design a lot, but also having a lot of the tools in front of me already. Really excellent designers are already on the team, and I have a awesome solutions library I get to sift through, and a lot of different not like templates, but a lot of different examples to go with while I'm designing, so I don't necessarily feel totally lost. It's definitely like a new experience to be in a space where I'm designing quite a bit versus having to do some research first or whatnot, because some of a lot of the research is being done by the human factors engineers. It's being taken care of on that side. And it's what's really cool is we get to see that. We get to sit on those meetings or those interviews with subject matter experts and really see people interact with the designs that we do. So I really like that a lot as well. I'll leave it there.
I think for me, currently within my stage within the company, I am in a little bit of the weeds, like you guys mentioned, but I think at a holistic view, I don't do the full product design role. I focus more on the architecture and functionality of, let's say, whether it be mobile or website design. And then working with my team as a whole, we kind of work with the creative team as well as the science and regulatory team to make sure that things are passing through, to make sure it's solid proof, right? So once my role is done as a UX designer, I'm more of a supportive role, going and making sure that the creative team is aligning and making sure that we're honing in on accessibility, right? Especially within the healthcare space, it's important that we kind of analyze that from not only visual, but from a back end perspective and from a depth perspective.
Awesome. We also want to know about career transitions. So many UXers, our stories are coming from different places. So Adriana, do you want to tell us about how you got into user experience and maybe what led you there?
Yeah, so mine's a little cheesy. So when I was growing up, I always wanted to be a part of the creative space. I just didn't know what. And so I thought I was going to go into animation, and I really solidified my rationale into animation. But then I realized I couldn't draw. And like draw to like what is beautiful, what you see in animation today. And so I realized, what can I do in a space where I'm telling people stories? And that's something I really strongly admire about people in the creative space, is being able to tell people stories in all different formats. And so while watching a movie, I saw that they had interaction design and UX designer on the team, and I was like, what's that? And so I looked more into it, and I saw and talked to peers that it was an industry that was booming in a way that people would least expect. And here I am today. I think I transitioned from UI designer to UX designer really quickly, because I love while I do love the visual side, I kind of love more the functionality and the behind things. And then working with someone that can execute that beautifully, more effectively.
Yeah, I agree with that so much. There's tons of storytelling in user experience. I feel like that's what I'm concentrating on all the time. And I love that, stumbling across in the credits, you saw the title, so you just looked it up and opened up a new world.
Yeah.
Who wants to share?
Brian, I know that you also have a career change going with Prime Academy. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my prior life, I was a hospitality worker, longtime restaurant worker. And I had a friend who also transitioned into tech. He started off in construction and project management, and he got into Scrum. And so I kind of he became a Scrum master. And I got to kind of start seeing the way he worked. And he started kind of pushing me towards, he's like, hey, I think this would be a good fit for you. And it was something that, I kind of put on the back burner. And when the pandemic happened, I obviously had a little bit of time in my hands and got a chance to really dig deep into it. And during that time, I was already, I've always wanted to be in the creative space. And at the time I was already a photographer for other restaurants that were still open, and using Adobe products and really being like trying to exercise and flex those creative muscles that we all have. And one day I was, it kind of just clicked that I could probably work in a similar way, a similar space with what my friend was telling me. So I finally did some research and looked up a school, went to Prime Digital Academy, one of the best decisions I've ever made in my entire life. And I'm so grateful for that moment, because it really solidified for me that this was a space that I could belong in and that I could succeed in. Storytelling has always been something that I've prided myself on. I've been told that I can spin some yarn, and so it definitely felt like a good fit. And so yeah, that's how my career change happened. Super blessed for it too.
We did not get a sponsor from Prime Academy for this evening, but I'm joking. They are one of our sponsors, but they are awesome. And Jalen, you also went through Prime Academy, so really good friends of ours. Really highly recommend anybody who want to get into UX. I know, Kevin, you have a previous career in project management. Speaking of that as well, can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, and I'll actually echo the feelings of gratitude I have that Brian just shared. I mean, like, I think I've been in UX for a little over 4 years, maybe close to 5 at this point. But I think the first 2 years, I was just so happy to be there. I finally broken through and made it to my first UX role. Because the several years prior, I was working in the advertising agency space, as a project manager, and managing all sorts of different types of work, which was really fun. It was a good time, but I always gravitated toward the more digital side of things, and working with UX people was always my favorite thing to do. So at some point I was like, I need to think about doing this for a living. And that took me to actually getting a master's degree in HCI from DePaul in Chicago. And through that network of DePaul grads, I ended up working at Zorro, and thought it was a it was a great transition, and I'm still very grateful that I made that jump too. So it's it's one of those career paths that continues to give back to you. You always have to learn things. You always have to expand your horizons, and it's like never ending. So it's a good time.
Yeah, agreed. It's always like a learning process, right? So how do you guys find your design inspirations? Do you guys look to certain sources or have any daily rituals you follow? Fozzie, what would you like to share with us?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's like a place I go to that inspires me. I think it's more like what I'm doing. I usually get ideas when I'm not sitting at a desk and like kind of like stressing over it. I go on like way too many walks, and I think that's usually when I get all my ideas, just like whether it's like design ideas or like side project ideas. It always happens when I'm like not really thinking or like putting too much focus on it. It just, I don't know, it's hard to explain. You're kind of just like walking around and like some stuff pops in your head. You start thinking about things quietly away from your desk, away from all the noise. That's usually like my biggest thing. I don't know, it's, I feel like maybe each person is a bit different with how they come up with ideas, but I think that's what works the best for me. So I always try to make time for like a quiet walk every day, with like no music, no podcast, just like straight quiet, just the noise of the city around you. Yeah.
That's awesome. Anybody else wanted to share?
I think for me, getting inspiration is very similar to Fozzie, but not in too quiet. I like my music. But I think what I've grown to learn going through this journey as a designer is that I'm trying to connect and meet as much people, and people inspire me. So networking inside my company, networking outside my company, and even for just randomness, just hearing about how they came into this career, kind of what this panel is about. I think that has given me inspiration to move from what I originally wanted to do as a designer to what I hope to become. Even just speaking to just someone that does just not even design, I think that's the greatest moment where I have like, oh, I should like casually jot this down and remember it. And having that and like working on passion projects that I keep on going in terms of not only healthcare, but something that I really want to strongly pursue. I think that's how I keep my inspiration alive being in this career.
Yeah. So speaking of what you would like to become, we're wondering about career trajectory. So we have kind of a range of experience here. Could you talk about what you see as a path you want to take or potential paths you see available to you as a designer?
I can continue on from that. So something that I've strongly learned from my previous jobs, and I want to hopefully go into that direction, is accessibility. I strongly there was essentially there was a lack when I was learning in college and going through my first jobs about accessibility and how to incorporate accessibility, and it wasn't until working at my second job where they were like, we're going to get fined if we don't put accessibility first. And that's where I really kind of dove into accessibility and navigation. And that kind of sparked my interest and peak to find kind of work that was related to that. And that led me to healthcare. I think, especially in Canada, healthcare, now with COVID, you see a boom of interest in kind of bringing people healthcare instead of people going to healthcare. But I think there needs to be a lot of work in terms of, for example, the hospital navigation. I think just in general, accessibility is everywhere, not only on web or digital platform, but just like service design as well. So I'm hoping in my future, I see myself more transitioning into service design role, to see where I can bring not only my knowledge of digital spaces, but also the physical aspects of that and combine the two.
That's awesome. Fozzie, how about you? Where are you today? Where do you see yourself going?
Honestly, I'm still trying to figure that out. I feel like I've changed my mind about what I want it to be every year. Because I feel like I keep changing every year, keep learning new things every year. So I think for me, like I think a goal of mine has always been to kind of start my own company. And I think I know it's like maybe unusual for a designer to say that, but I think for example, if you look at some like other design founders, I think they've gone on to create some very successful companies. I think it's like as a designer, you have a different perspective compared to maybe someone who maybe is like has a business background or a technical background. It's very like a, you know, creating like an experience focused company, I think is kind of like a big differentiator nowadays. So that's definitely like the far like the furthest stretch goal of mine. But I think in between, it's still kind of like a gray area, to be honest. I think I'm just trying to like adapt and learn as I go, and seeing, you know, where things take me. I have a lot of interests, so it's hard for me to focus on one thing. So yeah, it's a learning process, and it's hard for me to like imagine that at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're a great candidate to start your own business. Because as designers, we're really focused on solving an actual user problem from the very beginning. So I think you'd be great at it. And Kevin, so you've been in the field for about 4 years. So given your experience, how has your career changed? What are some different paths in the future you see for yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I come from I'm working in a growing company. Like when I started at Zorro, it was like a team of 4 UX people, and now I think we're at like 15 or something. So it's continuously growing. And I think like every year since I've been here, it's been like almost like having a different job. You know, like I've sort of started as more of like a UX architect role, and then sort of transitioned into you know, where I am now, which is more of like a strategic lead sort of. So but I mean, like I consider myself a total generalist. You know, I like to do the research. I like to do the design. I like to work with developers. I like the accessibility piece. You know, there's just so much to do. It's hard to choose what piece of it you want to specialize in, if anything. And I'm not at a point where I'm ready to make that kind of commitment. I like everything still. So I'm going to keep learning about as much as I can, and just see where it takes me. So that's kind of where I'm at.
And Brian, I wanted to hear your same experience as well, but also some of the obstacles you think you're having to move to the next level of your career as well.
Sure. Well, I was going to say that I think that when I first started interviewing for this company, Monterey Technologies, it was one of the first barriers was you have to get a security clearance, and it's for anyone who's working with sensitive information, I'm sure there's people on the panel that have this experience as well. That if you are going to be handling very sensitive information, you're going to have to be trusted by the government or by your employer. So for me, I think it's kind of a double-edged sword, if you will, but I think it's super cool because with that clearance, you become a very valuable candidate for other positions. And for instance, in my role, going forward with the kind of things that we work on, you have the ability then to go on and work with on rockets and really cool stuff like that, stuff that I never thought I'd have an opportunity to do, and stuff that has always interested me like at a high level. And so it's been really, really cool in that way, where I get to, personally, I think right now, with where I'm at and, continuing to learn and adapt and continuing to just be a sponge of information, I see myself having the opportunity to do honestly really cool things. So it's I'm just really pumped about that, and I think that some of the barriers of that is learning in an environment that you have little context from, coming into this company, it's been a high, steep learning curve, learning military lingo, learning different symbols and planes and like stuff that you never would think you'd be in a room hearing about. So it's definitely been not only like learning a lot as a designer, but learning a lot in a space that you're not familiar with, which I think being designers, that's what we're kind of supposed to be. We're supposed to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. People who seek, the uncomfortable spaces and try to learn from them on a deep level. So I'm pumped for it.
Awesome. Is Monterey hiring by chance?
They
I'm
actually
sure they
are.
are.
They are. If you know anyone that want a senior to mid-level UX designer that wants to get in, hit me up.
We have a full panel. So on the same vein, so what has been an obstacle in moving on your career? Kevin, would you like to share a little bit?
Yeah, obstacles. I mean, I think, I think that one of the things that that I think is unique to UX is that it's a very young field too. So there are a lot of like different expectations of what and like ideas that people have about what we do. So, not everybody's always clear, I think, in terms of like what value UX could bring to the table. And sometimes you feel like you have to kind of prove that out a little bit and show your worth by, kind of, I guess, showing the value of what good design can bring, and that takes rigor, and clarity and research findings, things like that. So, and storytelling abilities, being able to go in and show, we had this finding from this study that led to, this design which solved the problem, and look at the people are using it better, and it's much more user friendly, and it's helping people, solving the problem. So I think that is that's probably one of the things that it's really valuable within UX, because you got to be able to sell it a little bit, and just organizations and businesses are pretty young to it, and so that's I think the biggest piece.
Yeah, I feel like along with all those different expectations, or kind of needing to redefine what your job is for many different parties, that's something that can lead to burnout. And we're wondering about burnout that you all might have experienced, and some different tactics you have to either prevent it or cure it once it's happened. Brian, how about you? Do you have any thoughts on burnout?
Yeah, I'm definitely I don't think I'm getting to the point right now of burnout, because I'm still so fresh and have fresh legs in a sense for it. But when I clock out, there's still work to do sometimes, and it's hard to kind of disconnect. I'm sure everyone has that experience here. It's hard to disconnect sometimes, just your brain from thinking about the kind of things that you're hoping to solve or you're hoping to do tomorrow. And I think just having those clear, defined lines of separation when it comes to your work life and your home life is incredibly important, because without that, you really could just go down a rabbit hole, and it's so easy to just open your computer up and start going again. And I would heavily encourage you not to do that, because you're likely, you're not really getting paid for it to do it that way. So I would just say that, yeah, be kind to yourself, take care of yourself, and yeah.
Yeah, and Adriana, I'd love to hear your thoughts on burnout, especially with a focus on accessibility. There can be a lot of empathy involved in that space.
Yeah, I think for me, sometimes I hold people's emotions on like my sleeve sometimes, and that's something I'm still learning as a designer and generally as a human being. How do I sometimes disconnect a little bit while still giving 100% of my empathy to the stories that I'm hearing, especially in like the space that I'm in. I hear about opioid use disorders. I hear about like a lot of really struggling mental and physical and drug usage. And so how do I separate that when I'm designing or get to understand people? And I think it's a little bit of just like Brian mentioned, is how do I disconnect a little bit after work and not bringing my work with me and separating my space from my day-to-day work. And it's a little hard right now, especially with COVID starting, of like having my office in the same space as my bedroom, right? But I think what has gotten me through a little bit of burnout is just finding new passions and hobbies that surprisingly are not design related. I think that has helped me significantly in my mental state to clock out a little bit more often than I should.
Awesome. Thanks to you both. I think that's some really useful advice.
Something that you guys both mentioned is about when you clock out, how do you turn off that brain, right? I'd like to hear more from you guys about that because this is so fascinating to me. Like I have to learn that as well, and I always wanted to learn new tips. Fozzie, do you have any tips for us?
Yeah, I've become better at clocking out, mentally, like after work. I think it's something that Adriana just mentioned, just like kind of like, making time for the things that you enjoy doing that aren't work related, or even kind of like discovering some new things that you usually wouldn't have time for, like pick up random hobbies. I'm like an expert at picking up random hobbies. Like for example, like during COVID, after work, I would like try to like learn magic. I'm the worst magician in history. Like don't ever invite me to like a birthday party. I gave up on that, but it's a fun like it's a fun experience, like why not try to learn how to do magic? We always see it, but we're always amazed by it. And the hobby I picked up after was like learning how to draw, because I'm historically horrible at drawing. And I draw like comics every week, and it's been like the most fun creative outlet to do after work, and it helps me like separate a lot. Just I always look forward to that, just like drawing a comic and having some music in the background. It's like it puts you like in a fun mental state, and that could be anything. It could be reading a book, could be watching TV. It doesn't have to be productive. I think there's always a pressure of have a productive hobby, but just use that time to like recharge and do whatever you want. I think that's the mentality.
I do have to say that I follow Fozzie's comic on LinkedIn. We all should go and do that. It's really funny. I think it's
Thank you.
once a week or once every 2 weeks, right? It's commentary
Yeah.
on working from home, COVID time, and UX. So everybody should follow him. I wanted to move to the next topic. I really wanted to hear from you guys. What trends do you see currently in UX design overall? Kevin, I would like to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I know we talked a little bit about accessibility. I think that's a big trend that's only going to get bigger, as Adriana mentioned. There are other things. I mean, I know Web3 is something that's been discussed a lot, in the last couple of years with crypto and everything and NFTs. I think that that's a space that probably needs people like us as people who understand human nature and design for people. Making sure that the future of the internet is usable and user friendly. So I think that that's a big piece. But I think in the end, I think the basics of what we do will probably be pretty grounded in those fundamentals, like usability testing. The design process will continue to evolve, but I think some of those trends like workshops and the idea that the designer is sort of the facilitator of the process, I think that that's going to continue as well. And eventually maybe design will get really easy for people because of design systems and things like that make it really easy for them. And, they can start to sort of build things within businesses that maybe they couldn't before, and designers enable change like that to happen. So, yeah, I think the future is good in the field, and there's a lot of problems for us to solve continuously. So that won't change.
That is so cool to hear your perspective. I mean, it's hard to keep up with all of these trends as well. Anybody else wanted to tell us more about the trends you're seeing and how do you keep up with all of that?
I can share. I think I'll answer it differently. So less of a trend in UX, but more of like a trend in like, I guess, more human behavior. So one of my other hobbies is writing, and I write a lot about, some like the latest innovations and stuff like that. And usually when something feels, a little too advanced, it's usually met with like a lot of doubt and fear, rightfully so. I think we've all seen a lot of like sci-fi movies where things go wrong, and that kind of puts ideas in our heads about, that happening in real life. So I think an important job as a designer moving forward will be kind of like, how do you create trust and like be transparent with people, especially when there are things that they're like clearly doubtful of or scared of. Like, how do you make them feel confident in using your products? Because every industry and every company will start using things like AI, and I don't want to throw all the buzzwords at you, but how do you create that sense of trust and make people feel comfortable at the end of the day? Because that's what people want. They want to feel comfortable, and they want to know like who they're dealing with. So yeah, I think that's a reaction I've been noticing a lot. Especially, I wrote recently about Google, Apple, and Microsoft going passwordless, and it was met with a very mixed and polarizing response. Some people were like, "We love this." Some people were like, "No, never. I don't want that at all. I just want my passwords." So yeah, I think that's something to keep in mind.
Along with these trends that you're seeing, are there any skills you see yourself needing in the future, or maybe any topics you need to educate yourself on? So that was a good example of the ability to build trust. Are there any other needs you see coming for yourself as a designer? Right. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, so I was going to mention one that I think is important to know. I think something I've been trying to learn more about is not just AI, but bias in AI. I think it's important, especially if you have like a recommendation algorithm. I guess it's important just to realize that a lot of those responses are biased by the data that it's been trained on. So I think that's from like a designer's perspective, I guess it's important to keep that in mind and maybe ask questions for the technical people about what kind of data has been used, where it's been sourced from, just to make sure that it represents enough people that we're serving, and we're not just like gathering random data and maybe overrepresenting or underrepresenting certain people. So I think that's a good thing to know about and like read about if you go online and start reading about it.
Yeah, that's another really great example of things that we can be aware of as designers and hopefully find ways to influence. Brian, do you have any things coming up that you think you'll need to learn for your career?
Yes, so many things. There isn't enough time. There's just so many things to learn. But I think that something that's kind of overlooked and maybe not maybe overlooked, but is critically important in some of these conversations that I've heard and I've seen examples of now is true like leadership when it comes to we talk so much about like standing up for the user and advocating for the user, but also like sometimes in these meetings or with your colleagues, it's super important to be if you do see something that's worth standing up for, maybe not just for the user but just for principle, to have that leadership skill and to come off with it in a way that is conducive for teamwork, so people don't lose trust in yourself. And I think that what Fauzi was just saying is like building that trust in systems is just as important as building trust within teams. So I think that just growing yourself as a teammate and growing yourself as a leader is critically important. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's so important to keep in mind that leadership skills, learning how to be a better communicator, a better teammate at any level is so important.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating for you to mention leadership. So I would like to ask you guys, what kind of leader do you envision yourself to be? And how are you learning the skills to become that leader? Adriana, would you like to share with us?
So I think so I'll answer in two ways. One, I think there's so much in my career still right now that I need to learn, I need to grow. I think that's something I always look for in a new career job, or just in anywhere I look for is indirect mentorships, just for myself and just to see how the culture is within the company itself. If I see that growth within asking those questions and seeing how passionate they are about how mentorship is within a company, I think, whoa, that's a company that I can see myself growing because they really focus on that. So I still have, to answer your question, Jason, I still have a lot to grow. But as a leader myself, I think as all designers, I think it's one to put empathy on, right? And really showcase, everyone starts from somewhere. And if you don't let someone try or just work with them, you'll never get them to where they are. And I think letting go of the training wheels is sometimes okay. I think in my previous job, I had an experience where a lot of the times the work was meant for either very high level, mid to senior work, but we couldn't afford senior designers. It was just junior designers working on that. And I think that helped significantly to where I am today and learn. And I think Fauzi can also verify that. We had an indirect mentor that really kind of touched us in a as a designer in a way that we wanted to be like him, and the way that he not only gave us feedback, but the way as how he hold grace with the client and with other people. I think that's some hoping I want to be like him in a way. So yeah.
It's so cool. I think I know who you guys are talking about. It's awesome. Could be one of our panelists. So Kevin, I know that because we work together, we have a lot of these conversations as well. Like, how do you become a leader and what kind of leader you wanted to be? Can you share a little bit more on your perspective as well?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think the best leaders, I think Adriana, what she just said kind of hit it right on the head in a lot of ways. Like the best leaders I've had have all kind of just let you try stuff, and like the taking the training wheels off comment, like let it happen, let it fail if it has to, that everybody learns that way. That's the fastest way to learn, honestly. So the best leaders don't they don't micromanage, they don't dictate what you need to do, but they sort of kind of ask a lot of good questions, listen, and then kind of let you go and try stuff. So, obviously guiding as well, but, there has to be room for experimentation, especially I think, for creative field and for UX people who generally are very curious people, to give ourselves space to ask questions, to learn, and to experiment, so I think that those things are important. And then, there's leadership qualities and being a good listener and being transparent about what's going on. So I think that those things are key as well. So hopefully one day I'll also be a leader that embodies those qualities. So that's the idea.
All right. So we're also wondering about COVID-19 and the impact on the field. I think one of the most interesting questions we have related to that is, has this period in time sparked any new design ideas, maybe back to trends or just changes in the actual work you're producing? What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, it's hard to like imagine what the world was like before and before times now. It's almost like it's been so long. But you know, I think the work itself, yeah, I think part of the role of being a designer requires conversations with people, you know, and having and kind of sharing work and making sure you get input from different people and talking through it and maybe even whiteboarding things. And you know, we've found ways to do that remotely a lot of the time, but I think that that's something that I think is even now challenging, when most of us are remote. You know, to be able to like talk to your neighbor at work and say, hey, what do you think? You know, like, tell me honestly. You know, that's something that's still not available to us as much, but we have to find ways to like try to make that happen remotely, you know, and kind of force that to happen. So
Yeah, definitely challenges around that informal check-in
Yeah.
that we need so much of. Fozzie, how about you? Do you have any thoughts on things that have changed since COVID?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what Kevin said like resonated with me, especially the part where you just like talk to the person next to you and show them something real quick. Now it's more like, oh, do you have 5 minutes for a call? And it does feel a bit formal, even if it's like a teammate, but it's different from the in-person aspect. So I definitely miss going to the office. I've only been once in the past 2 years, but that one day was it was great. It definitely reminded me of the old times. So yeah, I think that's been like a challenge I've been trying to solve. How do I keep in touch with everyone at work? Something that I like to do is just every week I schedule like a chat with a team member that I haven't met, because I'm like relatively new to the company. I only started in January, and there's a lot of people on the team, so there's always like a new person to talk to. And we even have like a Slack bot set up that matches 2 people each week, and they go on a coffee chat, a virtual coffee chat. So if it's something you're struggling with, add that Slack bot to your Slack channel. But yeah, I think that's been like the main thing. I definitely miss like the human interaction, because I don't want work to just feel very like transactional, just me sitting at home and doing it. So I think that's been the biggest change for me.
I think I would agree on that. And then I also think I miss the walking to the kitchen moments, and seeing people not in my team. I think the moment that it becomes like that, I think it would become a little bit more normal. But I do miss the moments where I can learn about what other people are doing, not in design, but as well as in tech and PMs and the creative teams. I think that's something that I really miss, because especially within my organization, like where I work, we're very isolated because of the kind of like sensitive topic of healthcare and pharmaceuticals. So it's not like I can be like, hey, can you see my work for a sec? Because they might have some conflict with the company that I'm working at, so they can't see it. So I do miss like those like moments where I can chat with anybody about us outside of work. It's just a little bit harder, especially within a big organization where you don't know where to start, who you should talk to. And I think what I've always done when I do coffee chats is I kind of do a little game and in terms of telephone and be like, hey, who do you recommend that's outside, like that you would recommend to talk to? And I think that kind of has evolved in a way where I'm able to meet more people inside the organization outside of Click, and even just day to day, just like meeting up with people with like mask on.
You definitely answer part of the next question I have for you guys, which is like, since COVID is harder to really connect to folks, right? Because you're not right next to them or walking into the kitchen. And so it's really hard to build up your network. And it's an important part of, going to the next phase of your career. So how do you guys make sure those moments happen or those connection happens? Brian, do you have any tips for us?
Sorry, you cut out just a tiny bit. Can you answer ask that one more time?
Yeah, for sure. Like the question is about building up your network in this remote environment and make sure, you're able to build that up for your career. Do you have any tips for us?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, we're doing it right now, right? You're making yourself available. You're showing up. I think showing up, as they say, is 90% of it. Just make yourself available, make yourself open. And I think that even on LinkedIn, when someone shoots you like a random request, maybe send them a note back and be like, hey, like, start a chat with them or something like that. I think that also, finding these little places where you can have conversations with people, but maybe aren't necessarily directly linked to UX is super valuable as well. Finding people who maybe are down the line who are going to be using products, maybe inadvertently using your product, and kind of getting them involved with the whole process. But I think that just being open, finding spaces for you to listen to people and to be available and to just show up.
Yeah, Kevin and Fozzie, do you guys have other tips and tricks as well?
Honestly, not a ton. I would like to hear more if possible. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn, by the way, if you're out there listening. Yeah, I mean, it's let's all connect because it's we can all learn from each other, and in terms of like the continuing to stay involved in the UX community. I think there are things you can do on Twitter or Medium as well to try to like continue to learn and connect with people remotely, and just go to conferences, even if it's remote conferences. People leave comments and have chats there as well. So
all right, cool. So those are really, really good. Thank you guys so much for sharing all of that. I would like to open it up to audience Q&A. We have quite a bit. And the first question we have is for Brian or other panelists as well. You guys, you mentioned a solution example space. Are any of you guys working with a formalized design system? And can you describe your experience?
Yeah, so I'll jump in. So yeah, the design system that I'm working in, yeah, you could classify it as like formalized. It's we work with primarily work in XD in our like we call it a solution library. It's a design system, and that's published for all the designers to use. We also use mockups, and in mockups there's also a design system in there, which allows you to play around with ideas and bring these ideas into internal review, which is super cool. I didn't mention this earlier, but every week we do an internal review in our team, and if you're working on something you just want some extra eyes on it, you can bring it and present it. presenting is such a huge part of the role, and it gets you really comfortable doing that kind of work. But back to the question, yeah, we definitely use formalized design systems that we publish ourselves, and it definitely helps out a lot. I think that if you had to recreate the wheel every single time you had to go into a problem space every sprint, you'd be pulling your hair out. So yeah, super thankful for it.
Yeah, there's such a range of different availability with design systems at different organizations. So one question, it's from Andrea that I really like. So they have a lot of related experience to UX, visual design, some usability, but they don't have a portfolio yet. Can you guys share advice for maybe making your first portfolio pieces, or maybe share a project that got you into your first UX job? Let's see. Andrea, would you like to talk or start?
Yeah, so I would always recommend doing like a passion project. It doesn't have to be like very high advancing, but it's like it can even be something that you could be using every day. For example, like if you're using Netflix, for example, I got interviewed for Publicis Sapient, and one of the questions were, how would you fix a product that you're currently using today? And then that set the wheels that after my interview, I started creating a actual portfolio, like reimagining Netflix, because talking about it, I seem to have so much conflict with the horizontal scroll for in terms of accessibility. I was like, I can redesign this. So even if it's something that you do like use every day, or if it's a larger project, or even if it's like you go on Google and type out whiteboard challenges, and they give you a list of like 2022 like whiteboard challenges that you can use for like Microsoft, Google. I think that's a really good way to start. And then eventually even signing up for, let's say, hackathons or mentorships or things that offer you the ability to design something. I think that's a great thing to put in portfolio to see, hey, this is what I designed, and then you can reevaluate it like a couple months later and be like, hey, this is what I initially designed, and after learning all these tools and skill sets, this is how I would design it differently. So that's how like I would do it. And then there's also like academies as well, like BrainStation, the academy that Jason and Brian mentioned as well. I think those are also amazing opportunities if you have the extra funds to go into those academies to learn weekly on how to create a portfolio that will help you with your next job.
Yeah, those are some really helpful tips. And I loved your advice to show the progression. So you redesign once, you learn more, you come back. It's always great to show growth. Kevin, how about you? What was your first portfolio like?
Yeah, I think my first portfolio pieces were mostly like class projects probably. So, I think the best thing you can show is really the process more than anything. How you think is really what people are evaluating, and as long as you're focusing on the user, their problems, and how you're solving them, I think that those are the key pieces. And that's really the storytelling aspect too. It's you're telling the whole portfolio piece is essentially on a story arc. You have a problem, the user comes in, they have the issue, you learn about it, and then these are some possible solutions, and this is the solution that solved it. So focusing on that sort of framework, I think is key. And then fill it with whatever you'd like. So I think that's probably the biggest thing.
We have a related question for looking for your first job from Jared as well. For someone looking for their first job, what are the top 1 or 2 area of resources for further study or research while you're on the job hunt? that would be applicable for a wide range of roles. Fawzi, would you like to help us with this question?
Yes. I'm trying to remember, like, yeah, when I first started, I guess when I was looking for my first job, I mean, I like to read a lot, so I read kind of like the classic, the classic UX books. I think one of them was the Human Factor. I'm looking at it because it's somewhere here, and there was like the Don Norman book, and so I definitely went into the theory because I really want to understand like the process of things rather than just like jumping straight into design. But also, I think Adrian just mentioned like a really great example, like after kind of like reading all that theory, like trying to redesign a product that you like, and you can pick whatever you want as long as it's something that you use and and see like areas for improvement. I think that's been my favorite way to learn, and I think it taught me more than just like reading alone, because it's kind of forces you to apply and reinforces some of those concepts. And another resource that I really enjoy, it's actually a YouTube channel from a designer called Femke. It's Femke. She has some really great videos about design specifically for like UX, things like making a portfolio, making a case study, other design tasks, how to work with product managers, how to work with developers. So if you go on her YouTube, it's really, really great. And I'll teach you some things from someone who I think she worked at Uber and a bunch of other big companies. So I think you'll find that resource very helpful. I'll type it in the chat. Actually, let me find the link. I'll send it.
I
was just
second
gonna
that.
say,
Femke
please
is
share
great.
that.
Yeah.
Femke is great, and also The Craft. If you
Oh
haven't,
yes.
She's not as well known, but she has great work, and I 100% say go check her out because it's great.
I think I actually watched one of Femke's presentation on how to get your portfolio reviewed in a big FANG company, and it actually helped me with my last job. So that was amazing.
Yeah, she makes some really great stuff.
Yeah. So we have another question for you guys from Lisa. What are your biggest challenges and opportunities working with content designers?
I can answer. I mean, I feel like I've been lucky because I've worked with some really great content designers, so there haven't been as many challenges. I think that the opportunities are probably the best thing, because from my understanding, you don't always have the luxury of working with a content designer. So if you are working with them, like try to like work with them as like, and like collaborate with them, even if it's just like shadowing like how they work, and like ask as many questions as you can, and try to notice how they work, and like how do they write content for like this specific thing, and kind of try to understand like their thought process, because that might be you might have to do that someday if you're go to a startup and the roles are less defined and you're more of a general designer. You might have to like stretch yourself and do more than one thing. So say I like ask questions, see their processes, see how they actually document things, how they maintain content, like how they document it and all that. So I think those would be my piece of advice.
Brian, would you like to share with us as well?
I mean, I think that I actually wanted to touch on one of the previous questions, just like kind of how you work on a portfolio and how you get noticed, and like how, some advice for trying to look for a job. But I think that at the end of the day, we've kind of already touched on this a couple of times, I guess now, but they're looking for your how you think about design, your design process. And if you are, don't have access to, companies like how like Prime Digital Academy does, like they give you like hands-on experience, working with companies, you go out and do it. I think like if you have, the fundamentals in your in your arsenal, like go out and ask around and see if you can actually get into somewhere, to like just, you know, ask, like poke around and be like, hey, do you mind if I'm doing some research on this and that? Maybe I can, you know, shadow some of this stuff. You go into like Trader Joe's or something like that, you know, hang out and do some research and then apply, you know, UX fundamentals to that. And then at the end of the day, you're doing the work, and then you can put that in your portfolio. That is actually work being done. So, you know, flexing your UX muscles at all times. You know, maybe I don't recommend, you know, working for free, but sometimes it's necessary to get into the space, and just to keep your tools sharp. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there.
I think I'll add to that too, real quick. It's you know, if you have like a portfolio of work that is not you know, necessarily professional work, reach out to people in the field and see if they'll do a quick portfolio review for you. Like, it doesn't have to be an interview, you know, it can be an informal thing where just, hey, I'm looking for some feedback on this, you know, and they'll be able to tell you like where your portfolio might need to be improved a little bit. So that's something that helped me early on as well.
I know that we didn't get to all of the audience question. There's one more question for Adriana and one question from Cynthia, but we would love to address that after. You guys can reach out to the panelists directly as well for any questions that you have. This has been so awesome, guys. I am so proud, first of all, because I have witnessed your career trajectory in the last few years, and you guys all are awesome and have gone so far as well. So I'm so proud. And also seeing all of the experience that you guys share. They're all very diverse path into UX, diverse path to grow into UX and elevate, you know, your UX career as well. So thank you so much. Andy, with that, I would like to hand over to our president for some final words.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks again to everyone on our panel, our moderators for hosting, and to everyone who was able to attend tonight. We'll be sharing this recording out as a Zoom link afterwards, and we'll have this on YouTube a little bit after that so that people can check it out. And I think our panelists have indicated they're interested, they're available to answer follow-up questions. So if there's anything that you asked or wanted to ask that you haven't yet, please feel free to reach out to them or to us, and we'll do our best to help you out. So with that, yeah, we'll close it up. Thanks again, everyone. We'll hopefully see you at the July Summer Social. Make sure you check out the site for more details on that, and have a terrific evening. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Everybody. Thank you, panelists.
Bye-bye.